A final agreement between the United Kingdom and the European Union is very much possible yet far from certain, Britain's chief negotiator warned as he urged Brussels to abandon impossible demands. The two sides are entering the final stages of negotiations as the UK works to nail down a free trade agreement before the Brexit transition phase comes to a close at the end of the year. David Frost, who represents Britain in the high-stakes talks, urged his EU counterparts to scale back their unrealistic ambitions and cautioned that time is short. Tensions have flared over Brussels' attempts to limit the UK's ability to set its own fishing policy, design its own regulations and decide what aid to give British businesses. Meanwhile, leading Brexiteers have called for Britain to terminate the withdrawal agreement because it gives Brussels and its agencies continuing power over the UK for years to come. They warn that if the agreement remains in place, the UK will face years of legal wrangling and nothing less than a nightmare on Brexit Street. However, Mr. Frost insisted the government remains focused on trying to secure a Canadian-style free trade deal. He said, as we enter the final stages of negotiations, we are all focusing on what it might take to get a trade agreement in place. An agreement is still very much possible, but equally very far from certain. The last 2 weeks of informal talks have been relatively positive, but there remains much to be done, and time is short. We have been saying from the beginning of this process that we simply want a standard free trade agreement like Canada's. Sadly, the EU's position has not been so straightforward and we continue to be asked to accept provisions which do not reflect the reality of the change which our exit from the EU brings. If the gaps in these areas are to be bridged, the EU still needs to scale back more of its unrealistic ambitions and work on more realistic policy positions. I hope this will be possible this coming week, and I and my team are ready to work as hard as necessary to move things forward. The Centre for Brexit Policy (CBP) argues that in order to safeguard national independence, the present withdrawal agreement must be scrapped and replaced with a new treaty. It warns, we are now grappling with the dreadful consequences of acceding to a treaty that, if left unchanged, reduces the UK to the status of an EU colony.